Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Geoff, Pender, joined here today with reporters Taylor Vance.
Hey, Geoff.
Taylor, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And Michael Goldberg.
Hey, Geoff.
And we're fresh off a special election this week.
It was a little special.
It was special. Taylor, give us a rundown of what this election was. It was not your typical what we see.
Yeah. So this special election was a little different. It's essentially the vast majority of them are the result of court-ordered redistricting. You had the NAACP sued the states over the legislature's last round of redistricting to account for population shifts when they redrew the districts.
In 2022. Right?
I believe so, yeah. And the NAACP sued and alleged that the state diluted black voting strength, and they were successful. Of a federal 3-judge panel, mighty liberal progressive judges who were all appointed by the liberal lion, George W. Bush, agreed with the plaintiffs and ordered them to redraw in 3 areas. They ordered them to redraw 2 Senate districts, one in the DeSoto County area, one in the Hattiesburg area, and then a House district in the Chickasaw County area. And shocker, in all 3 of those areas, seats.
You say redraw or create those districts in 3 areas, but we have the domino effect or the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It affected
14 legislative seats. Yes.
So this, between the earlier primary and Tuesday night's election, 14
total
elections, right?
14 total. There were 4 seats that were uncontested, and so that left about 10 actual contested seats.
Okay.
And the 3 specific new majority minority districts, so to speak, a Democrat was elected, and so shocker, the Voting Rights Act lawsuits, whenever you do have a majority black district, it does allow for black voters to elect a candidate of their choice.
We've seen, I think, a good bit of national news, whatnot. I guess trying to lump Mississippi's results in with the blue wave that happened this week, maybe overplaying that a little bit.
I think correct? So. I think that's I don't really think anything about the political DNA of Mississippi has really changed. I think, maybe with overall sentiment maybe of national politics, you could argue that certain voting blocks, weren't as interested, and some were more interested to go to the polls. But no, I think, and I don't want to downplay the work that some of these candidates did in turning out their base. But make no mistake, this was the direct result of the redistricting and of these new districts.
And we do see now Democrats are the party that performs better in off-year elections around the country. They are more successful at driving low propensity voters, as they're called, to the polls. And there hasn't been too much hand-wringing, I would say, on the Republican side in Mississippi about these results due to these being, court or these districts being created by court order. But there has been some reaction that perhaps the decision by this federal panel could have been appealed.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How would that have worked? Why didn't it happen from your perspective?
So, I think to the first part of what you said is right. I'm kind of reaching back into the cobwebs of my brain from college when I had a minor in political science. but I think when people think that there is more at risk, they are usually more motivated to go to the polls. And I think the drama around, these are majority black districts, we need to turn out, get people to the polls. I think black voters are probably feel like they have a little more skin in the game as opposed to more conservative voters just wanting to kind of keep the status quo.
Sure.
But to the second part of your question, I have seen, a lot of, I think, blame cast on Attorney General Lynn Fitch. And sure, she is the head of the AG's office. She I think would have a large sway over that litigation. But she is one of only 3 really defendants in this, because it was not the Secretary of State's office that was the main party. It was the State Board of Election Commissioners. And that is a 3-member group comprised of the Attorney General Lynn Fitch, Secretary of State Michael Watson, and Governor Tate Reeves. And, now it's kind of funny. I think I saw Michael Watson saying that he wanted this to, he pushed hard for this to get appealed. And, I'm not trying to, nudge him too hard. But it's funny, now everybody wants to talk. When the litigation's ongoing, you try to ask them some of their thoughts on it, and they all say, well, I'm going to decline to comment because it's pending litigation. So it's kind of funny to me to see everybody want to kind of pipe up now. But there actually is a part of this that the Attorney General's office and that the defendants, the state defendants, actually did appeal, and it's still pending before the U.S. Supreme Court. And they did appeal one part of it, which is they are trying to get the U.S. Supreme Court to recognize that private voters, private groups do not have a cause of action to sue. And in other words, that just average people can't bring a Voting Rights Act claim, that only the Department of Justice under presidential administration has the right to enforce the Voting Rights Act.
Which would be a huge precedent.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. But also, and Geoff and I think we can probably get into this a little later, which people want to know. These are 2 seats, 3 seats overall that I think the Republicans have lost. It's not like I think we're going to see a big sea change in the legislature as well. Right. And who knows? You have the U.S. Supreme Court is considering major changes to the Voting Rights Act. It's going to be 5, 6, 7 years before the legislature can redistrict, can probably take a look at redistricting again.
Well, back up a little bit. Again, it would be way overstating to say this was some sort of blue wave effect in Mississippi. However, as I think you and I talked about briefly a little while ago, these weren't huge black voting age population shifts when they redrew these lines. These were a little over low 50%.
51, 55%, I believe, somewhere in that range.
3 different seats in 3 different areas that, one would have thought going into this, Republicans would have been a little more competitive. We saw a couple of, one flat-out landslide, it looked like. Yeah. In an area that you would think Republicans would have been more competitive in the Hattiesburg area. Yeah. Area race that
Johnny Dupree,
former Mayor Johnny Dupree won. So, again, probably a lot of that was turnout being sort of a midterm with, that's usually a natural effect if you got a party in office federally.
With that being said, though, Geoff, sorry, just to jump in, we do see some folks on the Republican side extrapolating from the results. So I'm thinking of Senator Jeremy England. He had a long post on Facebook reacting to the results, and he said that he believes his party needs to get better at minority outreach, and that's been a priority by some leaders in the state for the past few years. So it'll be interesting to see if there are any changes from a policy standpoint as a result.
And what we saw with this 3-vote shift or whatever, 2 in the Senate, I guess, they lost a 2/3 Republicans lost a 2/3 supermajority. That's probably not huge day to day, but that does come into play in some votes on constitutional amendments or whatever. And the overarching thing here is Mississippi has a high black population, 40%. Some people think it's a pretty good bit higher than that. We've seen Republican supermajorities built up in the House and Senate over years. If we get into redistricting, this has come up on a previous podcast we had. There's only so much Republicans could redistrict to the point of you're dealing with 40 to 45% of the population probably going to vote
and that population's growing.
At some point, I think maybe Senator England has a good point. If you're going to look towards the future.
Yeah.
This, one election does not a trend make, but nevertheless, I think just the numbers and the demographic shifts would probably back up his point to some extent.
I think you're right, but I also know I think lots of lawyers and I think leadership in both chambers over the years, they have gotten pretty crafty with their map making skills and their pens. So I think both things are kind of right.
And there's also the separate question, and this is a broader point that's playing out around the country. Donald Trump is credited with maybe catalyzing somewhat of a realignment among working class people of color. So in Mississippi, will we see some segments of the black voting base potentially shift toward the Republican side, or was this sort of somewhat marginal shift toward the GOP and the Trump era? Will that, end along with Donald Trump when he leaves office?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We shall see.
We will see. I don't know if I have really anything to add to that, but yeah.
Next year, I think we may start seeing whether that's going to be the case.
Yeah. But another thing that I have sort of been fascinated with, and you touched on this earlier. There's been a lot of media attention, including some from us, about the 2/3 supermajority, the Democrats kind of ending the Republicans' 2/3 supermajority in the Senate. And as you said, there's not just a ton the Democrats can do with that. I think I saw something that I think on social media that was true, which is the winning party tends to overplay their results, and the losing party tends to underplay things. And I think it's somewhere in the middle. I sure remember Republicans when they won a 2/3 supermajority, really celebrating and doing some victory laps, and now
explain a little bit. You have various majority votes on various issues in the legislature. A 2/3 majority, the way I've always heard it stated was you can do anything you want with a 2/3 majority.
That's true.
What are some of the things that require a 2/3 vote?
So the most, I think, direct thing that they could do with this is around the rules during the legislature. Yeah, and we are governed. The legislative session is governed by deadlines and rules. And, if there is a mistake or something goes awry, like, oh, gee, I don't know, the legislature can't adopt a budget, they either have to adjourn their session or they have to extend the deadlines and suspend the rules. And to suspend the rules, you need a 2/3 majority. Now, they're going to have to get, if everybody is present and voting, they're going to need some Democratic support, at least in the Senate, to suspend those rules. And that could give the Democrats some bargaining power.
Now, on the other hand, the Senate, there is still a little greater than
3/5.
3/5 majority Republican. Now, with a 3/5 vote, they can still pass spending bills, taxation bills.
Bond bill, yeah.
If they caucus, they can do it without a single Democrat.
Yes, correct. Yes. But I think, really the greater thing that's going to be more of an issue has really nothing to do with any of these thresholds. It's going to be close legislation, and I think that's going to be school choice. Which is going to be the big issue in the session, and the Senate is already going to be a tougher chamber to get that legislation through. I would predict, so you have 16 Democratic senators plus 2 now, that gives you 18 with these new elections likely. I would say there are probably 6 solid Republican senators who are, opposed to any school choice. That'd get you...
Or vouchers at the very least.
That'd get you to 24. That's close, and I think you probably have some more Republicans who are on the fence. That's a close vote.
If you look at universal vouchers, I'm still not convinced the House can put its money where its mouth is.
Yeah.
on going that far with it. That remains to be seen.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's significant that they have ended the 2/3 supermajority, but I mean, the Republicans still ultimately have a wide sway over what happens during the session.
Sure. And I mean, even in the Senate as well, you have at least a couple of Democrats that somewhat
some
frequently
conservative,
will break with their own caucus. So, we may not see a
I would just
change.
mention one more takeaway from the elections, and then we can move on. And that is, if I were, national Democrats or Democratic operatives, I would have my tail in DeSoto County yesterday. I think that shows that DeSoto County is extremely competitive. You have a growing black population there. I think the thing that shocked a lot of people, and I'm sure someone will correct me if the vote totals have changed, but incumbent Senator Kevin Blackwell, that race was pretty close.
Right.
I believe South Haven area. He had about 52%, I would say. I would be investing heavily in that district and probably some other House districts in that area.
Yeah.
And if I were the Republicans, I would start trying to defend those seats.
Like you said, that area is booming.
Yes.
Memphis suburbs growing.
Right. And it's a little bit different politically. It's, even a candidate for statewide office, I think we've seen these days, they're number one, they got to spend money in the Memphis market.
Yes.
But number two, I think we've seen some where they have to adjust the messaging a little bit.
Yeah.
It's, you could say that with the coast too, that sometimes it's, I guess, a little bit different population, a little bit different politically. But definitely DeSoto is changing, and it's changing quickly.
Yes. But what do I know? I'm just a young journalist, but
full of hot takes.
Full of hot takes.
No, I think that's a good hot take on DeSoto County, and I think it's one the parties have at least identified.
Yeah, I don't know if they've done anything with it, but they've identified.
Well, one thing they run into, mentioned in the Memphis market, it's expensive to campaign, and in that area. To especially one that requires television ads, media ads. Anyway, again, very interesting special election this week. I guess the only other thing I can think of legislative-wise was they came in and adopted a revenue estimate. They once a year before the session have to come in and sort of agree on how much money they're going to have.
Did the governor agree to it?
He did. He did.
I know. A few years ago he did not.
They agreed. At least at this point, it's subject to change. This is far out, but they agreed to agree that they're probably going to have just a little less money this year, which interesting. Part of that, I would think, would be the economy overall. We've seen some indications that there may be some slowdown, but then also we have huge tax cuts that keep kicking in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's just kind of math, I guess. But I've always noticed when they have less money, they fight more over how to spend it.
That's right. And I don't know. I would be curious to what you think of this, Geoff. I remember I had kind of an agency head tell me one time his first year going before the legislature and asking for money. It was done, and someone asked him, how appropriations subcommittee meeting went. And he said, "Oh, it was great. Those legislators were so nice. They were complimentary." And he said, "Oh, that's not good." And this agency head said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, if they're nice, that means they don't have any money. They're trying to be nice to you now and let you down. But if they're mean to you and they're grilling you, then that means they have a lot of money to spend, and they're fighting amongst themselves on how they're going to spend it." So I guess we have to wait until January to see how these subcommittee meetings go.
Yeah. Well, guys, good work on the elections. It was a long night. We didn't even order you pizza, so
I know
we didn't get anything.
Michael, I think you had a frozen pizza at
I had
home.
a frozen pizza waiting for me at home.
Okay.
Because I knew I wouldn't be, receiving any newsroom pizza, but there are other perks.
We'll work on that. We
yeah.
have, some midterms next year, and then 2027 we'll
Yes.
make up for it. Lots of pizza.
There's plenty of time for management to redeem itself.
Right. All right, guys. Well, appreciate the info, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Geoff.
Thanks, Geoff.